Good afternoon, dear colleagues and guests. Allow me to consider open the meeting of the Dissertation Council for the defense of Fang Qian's dissertation for the degree of Candidate of Pedagogical Sciences in the Scientific Speciality 130002, Theory and Methods of Teaching and Education, Russian as a Foreign Language, on the topic Teaching Chinese Students of Philology, Level B2, to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse. According to the order of St. Petersburg State University from the 25th of June 2020, number 5955/1, me, Tarnaeva Larisa Petrovna, Doctor of Pedagogical Sciences, Professor of the Department of Russian as a Foreign Language and Methods of its Teaching, St. Petersburg State University, was appointed the chairman of this Dissertation Council. And by the same order, the members of the Dissertation Council were approved. Let me introduce them. Buzalskaya Elena Valerianovna, Doctor of Philology, Associate Professor of the Department of Russian as a Foreign Language and Methods of Teaching at St. Petersburg State University. Fedota Buzanova is working in the remote interactive mode. Can you hear us? Vasilyeva Galina Mikhailovna, Doctor of Philology, Professor of the Department of Intercultural Communication of the Russian State Pedagogical University, named after Herzen. Do you see and hear us? Yes, I can hear you. Demidov Dmitry Grigorievich, Doctor of Philology, Associate Professor and Adjunct Professor at Zhenji State University, Taiwan, Province of China. Do you see and hear us? The answer is positive. And our applicant, Fang Qian. To improve the quality of communication, I ask you, dear colleagues, to turn off your microphones, but do not forget to turn them on when you are given the floor. I also inform you that audio and video recording of our meeting is being conducted, as well as live broadcast on the website of St. Petersburg State University. Simultaneous interpretation of speeches from Russian into English is also provided. At this time, an email address is posted on the live broadcast of the meeting of the Dissertation Council, where during the meeting all listeners can express their opinions and send questions to the applicant online concerning her dissertation and the current scientific discussion of her speech. These questions will be forwarded to me by the technical services, and I will voice them during the discussion. Questions must be related to the applicant's presentation and the content of her dissertation, and the name, position, and place of work of the author of the question must be indicated. Questions that are not related to the scientific discussion, to the discussion of the dissertation, to the text and assessment of the dissertation itself will not be voiced. In accordance with the procedure for awarding the academic degrees of Candidate of Sciences, academic degree of Doctor of Sciences at St. Petersburg State University, approved by local regulations, hereinafter the procedure, a meeting of the Dissertation Council is considered eligible if at least 2/3 of the approved membership of the Council takes part in its work, but not less than 4 people. Our Dissertation Council consists of 5 people. All of them are present, 2 persons and 3 in remote interactive mode. All members of the Dissertation Council and the applicants are provided with audio-visual contact. Thus, there is a quorum. The procedure of today's meeting of our Council, with a total duration of approximately 2 hours, is the following. A brief report of the chairman on the documents submitted by the applicants for a scientific degree and their compliance with the established requirements. Answers to possible questions, about 5 minutes. A short presentation by the applicant for a scientific degree reflecting the main points of her research, approximately 15 minutes. Questions to the applicant strictly according to her report, no more than 2 minutes per question. Answers of the applicant, speeches of all members of the Dissertation Council in turn, with the assessment of the dissertation research, with a summary of their positions, with questions and suggestions for the dissertation about 10 minutes per speaker. The speech of the chairman with his review about 10 minutes. Answers of the applicant for a scientific degree to questions and comments of the members of the dissertation councils, no more than 20 minutes. Open discussion, speeches at the request of those present at the defense of the dissertation with a summary of their positions, or with specific questions and proposals for the dissertation strictly on the topic of the research. All interested persons are requested to register in the registration form and completely introduce themselves before your performance. Presentation by the chairman of questions addressed to the applicant, which came in order to discuss her speech, and scientific discussion on the broadcast of the meeting of the Dissertation Council of St. Petersburg University website. Answers of the applicant, presentation by the scientific supervisor of the applicant, discussion of the results of the defense by the members of the Dissertation Council before the open vote, during which the sound of the broadcast is muted, open roll call, counting of votes by the chairman of the Dissertation Council with the entry of the results into the minutes of the meeting, making a decision on awarding or not awarding an academic degree, concluding remark of the applicant. Dear colleagues, are there any questions or objections to this regulation? No objections. Let's move to the implementation of the rules of the meeting. But before, please turn off the sound of your mobile phones. Thank you for understanding. Fang Qian's dissertation for the degree of candidate of Pedagogical Sciences in the scientific specialty 13002, Theory and Methods of Teaching and Education Russian as a Foreign Language, on the topic Teaching Chinese Students Philologists, Level B2, to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse for protection by the order of the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg State University from the 29th of June 2020. Fang Qian wrote her dissertation research on the basis of St. Petersburg State University. Her scientific supervisor is Doctor of Pedagogical Sciences, Associate Professor, Professor of the Department of Russian as a Foreign Language and Methods of Teaching at St. Petersburg State University, Professor Moskovkin. The number of publications of the applicant in which the main scientific results of the dissertation are stated according to the list presented: 3 works in peer-reviewed scientific publications from the list approved by the Ministry of Education and Science of the Russian Federation. There are no publications in journals indexed in the scientometric databases Web of Science at Scopus. The applicant submitted to the scientific secretary a complete package of documents for acceptance for consideration and defense of the thesis. All documents correspond to the clause 12 of section 3 of the procedure. All the documents submitted by the applicants on the information, I received them from the curator, and they meet the requirements and are stored, are kept in the applicant certification file. Their copies are held by an employee of the Department for Maintenance. The activities of dissertation councils, which is now who is now in the is present. Before giving the floor to the applicant, dear members of the council, do you have general questions to the applicant, and if there is a necessity to announce and consider the entire list of documents? No, there is no such a need. Dear candidates, the floor is given to you. Dear chairman, dear members of the dissertation council, dear guests, we present to your attention a dissertation research on the topic Teaching Chinese Students of Philology, Level B2, to use conventional constructions in linguistic discourse. Teaching Chinese students of philology, the grammatical side of scientific speech, including the use of conventional construction, is one of the urgent, actual, but at the same time complex problems of the methodology of teaching Russian as a foreign language. The difficulty lies, first of all, in the variety of Russian conventional conditional constructions in comparison to Chinese ones, which causes difficulties with their accurate understanding and assimilation. Secondly, apart from conditional construction, Russian conditional constructions also express a number of other meanings which are traditionally beyond the attention of teachers in the process of teaching students Russian. Thirdly, scientific discourse use a set of conditional constructions which is a characteristic of the scientific style of speech, and their assimilation is a difficulty not only for foreign but also for Russian students. All this determines the relevance of studying the issues of teaching Chinese students philologies, the grammatical side of scientific speech, including the use of conditional constructions in linguistic discourse. And in the existing scientific and educational works do not investigate the specifics of teaching foreign students to use conditional constructions in scientific, in particular linguistic discourse. This specificity is partially reflected in the textbook edited by Alla Vasilyevna Velichka for foreign students of philological faculties, which is designed to provide an understanding of conventional constructions in the course of reading text on philology. It should be noted that there are no textbooks for teaching philology students to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse. There is no doubt that it is important for foreign students philologists of the senior undergraduate courses level B2 not only to understand Russian conditional constructions but also to use them in their own speech, for example, when writing term papers and diploma works. Accordingly, a methodology for teaching foreign students philologies to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse should be developed, which would take into account their previous experience of studying the Russian language and nationality. All mentioned above stipulate was the cause for the topic of our research. The object of our research is the process of teaching Chinese students of philology to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse level B2. The subject of the research is the methodology of teaching. The object of our research is methodology of teaching Chinese students of philology to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse. The aim of this study is to develop and experimentally test the methodology for teaching Chinese students of philology to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse. The aim of this study is to achieve this goal involves solving the following tasks, which are shown on the slide. The main findings of the study are as follows. 1. In the course of the analysis of 159 scientific articles on linguistics published in 2008-2017 in the journal The World of the Russian Words, was established that linguistic discourse uses the same conventional constructions as any other scientific text. The percentage of conditional constructions in these articles was revealed. Complex sentences with conjunctions if and when 39%, simple sentences containing prepositional case combinations with a condition 33.2%, simple sentences containing adverbial expressions with a condition 13.9%, sentences containing predicates with a conditional consequence value, 11.4%. Complex sentences with a conjunction if only, 2.4%. 3 main typical fragments of a scientific text have been identified that require the expression of conditional relations. Rule, explanation or conclusion, hypothesis, classification. Number 2. As a result of the analysis of curricula and textbooks of the Russian language for foreign students studying in Russian universities, it was found out that conditional constructions are studied by students already at the stage of pre-university training. Students who speak Russian at the B2 level should already have mastered all 5 types of conditional constructions that function in linguistic discourse. Number 3. 2 stages of teaching the ways of expressing conditional relations are highlighted, formal and functional. The main task of the formal stage of learning is the formation of grammatical skills. The main task of the functional stage is repetition, generalization, and differentiation of the studied grammatical material. Difficulties in the assimilation of Russian conditional constructions by students are highlighted. They are associated with the fact that in addition to the meaning of the base inference, these constructions also express the meanings of selection and limitation, explanation, opposition, concessive, emphatic meaning. Number 4. Comparison of the ways of expressing conditional relations in the Russian and Chinese languages showed that in the Chinese language there are no ways to express a condition in a simple sentence. To express conditional relations, we use complex sentences with a fixed order of its parts. First a condition, then a consequence. It was concluded that it is necessary to take into account these differences in the process of teaching Chinese students to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse. Please stick to the time, dear candidate. The goals, content, methods and principles of teaching Chinese students philologists level B2 to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse, as well as provisions important for determining the structure of experimental materials, are formulated. Everything rest is shown in the slide. Number 6. Experimental verification of the effectiveness of the developed methodology for teaching Chinese students philologists level B2 to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse has shown its great efficiency in comparison to the traditional method. The coefficient, the results are shown in the slide. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Are there any questions to our candidate? Strictly according to the report. No voice in the microphone. If there are no questions, let's move to the our reviews. If there are any questions, are there any questions, dear board members? Strictly according to the report, no questions. If there are no questions, let's move to the reviews concerning the dissertation. There are no external reviews. Now the reviews from our board members. Our candidate can answer the review one by one, or after all the reviews are voiced. I offer to answer either after all the reviews are voiced. Do you agree with me? Yes, I do. Dear board members, do you agree with this procedure? Yes, we do. Thus, Nina Leonidovna, the floor is yours. I cannot but agree with the author of our research, Fang Qian, that the teaching of Chinese students, philologists, the grammatical side of the speech concerning the using of conditional constructions in written speech, it is a very complicated problem. Author is right that in order to optimize the process of teaching Chinese students philologists, it is necessary to take into account the functioning of this construction in linguistic discourse and the ways of the performance of these conditional relationships. And the main advantage of the research is the finding out of the main fragments of linguistic scientific text, rules, hypothesis, classification. One of the positive sides of this work is the correlation of the components of the systems of the teaching Chinese students of using linguistic constructions in scientific discourse, level B2, the aim of learning, of study, teaching, content of teaching, and so on. The research realizes the principles of teaching foreign philologies to use conditional constructions. Thanks to this, we can separate conditional and other constructions, conditional constructions used in academic and other functional styles of the Russian language, constructions which shows real and unreal condition. The author developed analytical, perceptive, and creative productive tasks, as well as transformational tasks, in order to master synonymic ways of showing the conditions and understanding the difficulties of Chinese students when they study conditional constructions. The difficulties are stipulated by the lack of adverbial participial phrases and prepositional nominal combinations. She attempted to analyze the use of different conditional constructions. I would like to receive the information about the percentage of such conditional constructions. I am sure that it is that the description of the program of teaching test is correct. Pre-experimental and post-experimental test is also successful, but there are some drawbacks. The hypothesis of the research can't fully reflect all the difficulties of Chinese students, how they use conditional constructions. Paragraph 1.1.1 shows some drawbacks. On the basis of such data, the author proves that the learning of conditional constructions is difficult not only for Chinese but also for Russian students. It is doubtful, especially 2 stages of teaching Chinese students to use conditional constructions, formal and functional stages. Why is it formal stage? Because it is a rhetorical stage. Fang Qian thinks that the separation of formal and functional stages are stipulated by the process of teaching, and the teaching of to use such construction in linguistic discourse should be within the frames of functional stage of teaching. As for the provisions for the defense, it is necessary to take into account the stages of learning conditional constructions. It is doubtful. The priority role of generalization, repetition, and generalization of conditional constructions, analysis, transformation, and so on. Why are they different from other constructions which show cause and effect relationships, purposeful relationships, and so on? The examples have nothing to do with the conditional constructions, page 24, 25, 26. For example, we see such constructions as the zone of intersection of two forms of verb, and so on. In this case, in my opinion, the process character and time meaning are reflected, and set expression, which means conclusion rather than condition. And the last statements that conditional constructions, there are no conditional constructions in modern textbooks on teaching students Russian language as a foreign one. I don't agree with this. The thesis of our candidate on the topic teaching Chinese philology students level B2 to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse complies with main requirements from the of the order of St. Petersburg State University from the 1st of September 2016, and our candidate deserves the degree of on specialization 13002 theory and methodology of teaching and upbringing Russian as a foreign language. Point 11 was not violated by our candidates. Thank you very much. Now the next review, Elena Valerievna, the floor is yours. Please switch on the sound. Can you hear me? And conditional constructions are the main indicator of logical and statements, and textbooks don't take into account national specificity of the audience. The thesis of our candidate solve both problems. The methodology of teaching Chinese students or philologists to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse. It is necessary to note the laconism of the text of the dissertation. There are a lot of linguistic researches concerning the use of adverbial relationships and so on. It was necessary to outline the content part of the problem, and Fang Qian chose concretization and paid attention to the concept of to the meaning of the concept, and she did not the author of the dissertation defined the variative character in the genre of scientific article, and she separated them from other conditional constructions for this type of linguistic discourse. The accuracy of the analysis and critical thinking of methodological framework of teaching not only to understanding but individual use of conditional constructions is highlighted by the depth of the study of the chronology of the question and tables, lists of the succession of the introduction of the constructions into the process, the examples of the tasks and the analysis of the text books. The second chapter of the thesis is devoted to the description of the methodological framework and the conduction of the experiments, which proves the true character of the hypothesis and which proves that the aim of the research was achieved. The conclusions in the linguistic part of the work are based on the argumentative analysis of the reliable sources in the sphere of semantics, syntaxis, and the methodology of teaching. They are supported by the tables and schemes. And mainly this work can be called innovative, apart from usual principles such as taking account native mother tongue and the stages of teaching. The author includes her own principles. Instead of abstract models and schemes, types of exercises, Fang Qian places in clause 2.2 experimental materials with the comments to the tasks. The reliability of the research is defined by the adequate character of the methods of the research to the tasks and the aim of the dissertation. The research of our candidate makes a contribute into the development of the ideas connected with the studying of the specifics of the scientific discourse, and in the methodological aspect, argumentative division of the process of teaching of conditional constructions into formal and functional stages. It is very important, and the practical significance of the research is defined by the opportunity to use training materials and check tests in the practice of teaching for in order to correct skills and abilities concerning understanding and use of constructions in scientific works. And main scientific results of the thesis are published in 3 journals recommended of the Ministry of Education and Science of the Russian Federation, and these results reflect the results of the research. My remarks: first, the interpretation of the semantics of conditional constructions is connected with the question about stylistical norm. In many cases, there is lack of some concretization and author's opinion. For example, in clause 1.1.2 on page 19, there is an example which illustrates the use of conjunction when. If we consider that it serves, it plays the role of indicator of conditionality, the sentence is not correct in stylistical terms. Number 2, when you describe existing methods and programs, training programs, the author does not comment upon a linguistic framework for the development of the succession of the types of transformation of conditional constructions. What are the principles for gradual complication of the operations with conditional constructions apart from national specific criteria? In other words, whether the principle of gradual complication of the material is important in the developed methodology, and the main criteria is only the division of the construction according to their belonging to the fragments. Number 3, page 68, page 48, table number 2, proves that conditional relations in simple sentences are more complex for Chinese students rather than complex sentences. And how can you explain this fact? Number 4, in the theoretical part of the research, you say that in order to understand conditional constructions, you analyzed scientific articles, but in order to find out typical fragments in which these constructions are used, you took synopses, textbooks, and guidebooks. I want additional comment. Number 5, the tasks for the exercises in the course of lessons are aimed at work with separate sentences in which the variants of conditional constructions are selected in connection with more frequent variants which are characteristic of a type fragment, but all in all, the dissertation of Fang Qian complies with the requirements by the order from the 1st of September 2016, number 6821/1, the order on awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, and point 11 was not violated by our candidate. Have you finished? Thank you very much. The next report, Galina Mikhailovna, the floor is yours. Your report. Thank you very much. Please let me be as brief as possible, and I make my review shorter. I think that the research of Fang Qian is highly actual, is very actual, due to the fact that recently there are not so many works dedicated to the most important aspects of teaching Russian language connected with the system and rules of Russian grammar. At the same time, conditional constructions are not only considerable for Russian grammatical system topic, but also very complicated for foreign students who study Russian language. And poor research of these problematics and the absence of a comparative aspect in its former methodological understanding makes the work of our candidate necessary for the teaching of Chinese students. The analysis of the peculiarities of Russian conditional construction against Chinese language allowed our candidate make very important conclusions and find out lacunary and asymmetrical phenomenon which appear in the process of appearing conditional relations. As for the novelty of the research, it should we should focus on two stages of teaching conditional constructions, formal and functional, which allow to systematize the material itself and the ways of work with it. And the work of Fang Qian is accomplished at high theoretical level. The experimental part of work was very correct. And as for the aim to develop the methodology of teaching Chinese students, philologists, to use conditional constructions, Fang Qian, as for the first chapter of the dissertation, the research is very in-depth. In the first part, the most important is where the two contacting languages are compared and allowed our candidate to understand problem issues for language interference. Then our candidate developed very interesting lessons, 6 experimental lessons aimed at the separation of conditional and other adverbial constructions, showing the semantics of condition. An experimental check is very persuasive. It allowed our candidate to conclude about the efficiency of the methodology and the reliability of its use in the courses on teaching Chinese students Russian language as a foreign one, and the abundance of the research material which stipulated the reliability and objectiveness of the conclusions and findings. And without doubt, this work is of high practical significance. It is written with clear academic language. It contains a lot of general schemes and tables and so on. I don't have the remarks concerning the main content of the research and provisions of the research. I want to ask some precising questions and remarks. As for the terminology, in the dissertation the author uses the terms of linguistic discourse and linguistic text, scientific discourse and scientific text. I have a question. Do you distinguish these terms, discourse and text, or you use them as synonyms? Number 2, as a result of the work, Fang Qian concluded that the logics of the use of conditional constructions in linguistic and other types of scientific discourse are not different from each other. Did you find out some differences in the use of conditional constructions in linguistic and other types of scientific discourse? For example, the percentage of the use of constructions with in their lexical feeling in and in terms of a specific type of text fragment. Our candidates made serious comparative analysis of conditional constructions in Russian and Chinese languages, but because of the fact that the dissertation speaks about the use of conditional constructions in the specific type of discourse, it would be better to compare not only the constructions themselves, but type fragments of linguistic text in Russian and Chinese languages. For example, rules, hypotheses, and so on, which contain conditional constructions, because the peculiarities of the structure of the discourse can be asymmetrical material and create the zone of interlingual interference, and it will create difficulties for Chinese students. And one more remark. How do you define the term linguo-methodological text, and what is the difference between these tests from the complex of tasks and with such interpretation, the tests which are contained in these works, pre-experimental tests, it is the complex of tasks aimed at the achieving of the aim of the research. I would like to hear the answer to these questions, and my remarks don't influence the overall impression, positive impression from the work. And the dissertation of Fang Qian on the topic teaching Chinese philology students level B2 to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse, compliance with the requirements of the order from the 1st of September 2016, number 6821/1, procedure on awarding degrees at St. Petersburg State University, and our candidate deserves the degree on specialization 13/0002, theory and methodology of teaching and upbringing. Point 11 was not violated by our candidate. Galina Mikhailovna, thank you very much. The next review, Dmitry Grigorievich, your review. Thank you for the floor given to me. Dear colleagues, and I want to say that the topic of our candidate and the research of our candidate is very actual nowadays, and especially for teaching Russian as a foreign language, and the results of the work are very useful. But the difficulty is in the fact that we Russian Chinese understand differently the very category of condition in the Chinese language. Two key ideas are combined: health and situation. As a result of this combination, there is an idea of condition. Russians understand this condition as an external condition, what we hear. And the difference is in the fact that Russians understand this condition as an external one, and the Chinese understand this condition as their own state of health. And the Chinese stipulate the world, taking care about their health. For example, the idea clause, article, paragraph, slip of the tongue, requirement of thing, it's more formal. This understanding of the condition is closer to Russian, but the name covers logical categories. It is connected with practical and pragmatical settings. And as for ways of conceptualization of the condition in Russian and Chinese mentality, It is connected with extreme difficulty of understanding by Chinese Russians the combinations with a conditional meaning. In the first chapter, the concepts of scientific linguistic discourse and conditional construction are introduced, and our candidates compare the meanings of condition of clauses with the meaning of contradiction. The analysis and in the process of teaching, formal stage is before functional stage. For the amorphous languages, the formal stage is more time consuming. A lot of attention is paid to the exercises of active type. For example, page 75 offers close sentences with the clauses of conditions, and there were experimental and control groups of students, and at first there was entry test, then there was parallel teaching, and finally final test came. As a result, experimental group showed the accumulation of average score up to 4.5 times higher in comparison to control group. These are quite successful results, but that could be higher if the criteria would not be so strict. And our experience shows that individual correction of mistakes in not only gives the additional stimuli to study, but also creates useful stress, with the help of which the student can repeat the attempt to convert his passive knowledge into the active. My remarks. In the work, our candidate speaks about taking into account native language when we are teaching Russian language. Pages 10, 50, 63, 69, 104. Conclusion 4 speaks that there are no some conditional constructions in the Chinese language. It seems to us that this comparison between Russian and Chinese language is not necessary for Chinese students who study Russian. It is necessary for Russian Chinese. Page 339, it speaks about different understanding of mixed meanings. For example, conditional and comparative in construction there, and if it is absent in the section of conditional constructions, it does not mean that it is excluded from the program. But unfortunately, our candidate does not speak whether she considers such transitional constructions in other sections, and if she considers them, the programs are not correlated. The programs are correlated not only not according to the presence or absence of this or that case, but according to their classification. And the meaning of opposition in the construction, if that is not connected with condition with the help of direct genetic connection, because these both meanings are combined with the help of different understanding of predicate. There are some cases which could be corrected. On page 67, exercise 4, point to the concept of Old Russian absolutely palatal sounds, soft palatal sounds. Some of them, for example, hushing sounds, zh, sh, have become hard, and as a result of secondary palatalization, and it is the result of palatalization before the vowels of the front vowels. And verb leak, index 1 and index 2, they are called homonyms, but these are only homophones. In case of conjugation and declension of these forms can be clearly distinguished. But my remarks are not of principal character. They are of private character, and they don't influence overall positive impression from the work. And our and this dissertation introduces useful scientific material into the scientific circulation, theoretical and practical significance of the work are without doubt, and the dissertation of our candidate on the topic teaching Chinese philology students level B2 to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse complies with the requirements of the order from the 1st of September 2016, 6821/1, order on awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University. Our candidate Fang Qian deserves the degree of the candidate of Pedagogical Sciences on Specialization 130002, Theory and Methodology of Teaching and Upbringing. Thank you for your attention. Dmitry Grigorievich, thank you very much. And now my review on the dissertation of Fang Qian on the topic teaching Chinese philology students level B2 to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse. The actuality of the research is without doubt, and there is a solution of some separate problems, the use of conditional constructions. This problem is very significant if you take into account the fact that the number of students from China is increasing in Russian institutions. The knowing of scientific discourse is the main condition of their professional activity. The main advantage of the work is the respected theoretical and methodological framework. The works of leading scientists are represented in the research. Comparative description. And the hypothesis is reliable and proved. The scientific value, novelty of the work is tested and proved. And as our candidate, as Galina Mikhailovna highlighted in her speech, I agree that the number of analyzed works is impressive. The analysis of 159 articles was shown, and the percentage of conditional constructions was shown on the basis of continuous sampling, and in the theoretical provisions in the first chapter became the basis for the methodology of teaching Chinese students philologists to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse level built to the aims of teaching Chinese students philologists to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse. The selection of the content of training in the predetermined contexts, methodological recommendations were offered. All the components of the teaching process are systematically connected, and it is the strictly structured methodological model. On the basis of this model, the experimental training was conducted. It showed the efficiency of this methodological model. The indicators on experimental group were higher than in control group, and the coefficient of correctness of the use of conditional constructions increased, and the author proved the hypothesis of the research, and it allows to consider this methodology very successful, and this research has a high scientific potential and opens prospects for teaching Chinese students other conditional constructions in the linguistic discourse. The structure of the thesis is very logical and reflects the results of the research. The materials of the research are very correct. The conclusions comply with the content of the chapters, and the synopsis of the thesis reflects the content of the dissertation research. This work impressed me very much. It is a very serious work. There is an in-depth analysis of theoretical provisions. It is very bold work in terms of solving linguodidactic problems. The work is not is deprived of critical assessment and remarks, but nevertheless there are some discursive moments in the work, and there are some provisions I can't agree with. I don't agree with the correlation of analytical tasks to the receptive type. It is not, your examples have nothing to do with receptive type. Maybe you can explain to us the term, your understanding of the term receptive task, and how is it different from the term receptive and productive, traditionally accepted in the methodology. Number 2. There is a question concerning the scientific novelty. It was described, the content of the stages of training foreign students to use, philologists to use conditional constructions in scientific text. The description of this, page 8. These constructions are highlighted rather than described in order to achieve the goals of the research. These are stages of cognitive activity. In order to master specific educational material. And as for the theoretical significance of the research, in my opinion, in-depth analysis of Russian linguistic discourse from the point of view of the use of conditional constructions. In my opinion, this detailed analysis of grammatical component of linguistic discourse contributes to the development of the theory of discourse. This proves the theoretical significance of the research of our candidate. On the whole, I want to say that Fang Qian coped with the theoretical and research problems, and the research contributes to the development of the methodology of teaching foreign languages, in particular teaching foreign language as a foreign one. And the thesis of Fang Qian, teaching Chinese philology students, level B2, to use conditional constructions in linguistic discourse, conforms with the requirements of the order from the 1st of September 2016, number 6821/1, procedure on awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University. And our candidate deserves the degree of the candidate of philological sciences on specialization 13002, theory and methods of teaching and upbringing. Point 11 was not violated by our candidate. And now the answers of our candidate to the questions in the review. Fang Qian, the floor is yours. Dear Chairman and board members, thank you for your interest to our work and for the feedback provided. Your comments, questions and recommendations are very valuable and important to us. With great gratitude, we accept all useful comments and will take them into account in our further research. I will try to answer some questions. First, the answer to the review of Fedotova Nina Leonidovna. Dear Nina Leonidovna, thank you very much for your valuable comments. We agree with them, and I would like to answer only the fourth remark, which concerns the distribution of 2 stages in teaching foreign students to use conditional constructions. It should be noted that there is no sharp boundary between the stages of teaching foreign students to use grammatical constructions in the context of the communicative methodological paradigm. At all stages of training, students both must the forms and learn to use them in the speech. Formal and functional stages are in the following. And constructing of word formation form. And construction of the sentences and of different structures. They are accomplished at the formal stage. The number of functions and conditional constructions are accomplished at the formal stage of training, and the functional stage, it is important for foreign students to know in what ways these functions are expressed and what place conditional constructions occupy among these methods. Thus, in their minds, an idea is formed about the functional semantic field of the condition, in which all ways of expressing the condition are delimited, and which by virtue of this ensures the correct use of conditional constructions. At the functional stage, it is advisable to start learning from the meaning of the base in inference, which is basic in the functional semantic field of the condition, which is a characteristic of a scientific text. At the same time, it should be indicated that this meaning can be expressed in units of different language levels. Vocabulary, complex sentences, and simple ones with prepositional case constructions and adverbs, adverbial combinations. And it is at the functional stage that the skills to choose constructions that correspond to certain fragments of specific discourse are formed. One more clarification. We consider the phrase apparently as an introductory expression. In the book of grammar edited by Velichka, it is noted that in the Russian language, a group of introductory combinations with a conjunction has formed, if it is on the basis of the subordinate clause of conditional sentences. In the example, it appears that the second answer seems to be preferred. The predicate verb should be preferred, emphasizes the subjective, conjectural nature of the conclusion. Therefore, we consider it apparently as a part of the conditional construction. Answers to the review of Buzalskaya, Elena Valerianovna. If we answer the first remark, let us clarify that in the scientific literature there is a distinction between an oral and written discourse. In our study, all examples are selected from written scientific texts. We did not check them for compliance with the stylistic norm of written scientific discourse. We trusted the authors and editors of these sources. Sometimes we noticed in some sources elements of oral discourse, but when developing our teaching methodology, we did not take them into account. The second question is about the principle of gradual complication of the material. When organizing the educational material, the main principle for us was that conditional structures belong to typical fragments of a scientific text. Since at an advanced stage of training, the text is traditionally the main unit of training, and grammatical units are studied to the extent that they are found in different typical fragments of the text. But we also took into account the principle of gradual complication of the material, offering students first work with familiar material and then with less familiar, not familiar at all. Елена Valerianovna writes that in table 2 on page 48, Chinese students more often use sentences with prepositional case combinations in scientific reports, 68 examples, rather than complex subordinate sentences, 42 examples. That is not true. Table 2 indicates that in these reports we identified not only 68, but only 39 simple sentences with prepositional case combinations. Chinese students use fewer simple sentences with prepositional case combinations, and their set is less diverse. Number 4. To identify typical fragments of a scientific text in which conditional constructions are used, we took abstracts, synopses, textbooks, and teaching aids in which the contexts were more understandable for students of philology at this level than these contexts were used in our tutorial. To identify the percentage of the use of conditional constructions, we selected authentic scientific articles from the journal The World of the Russian Word. This helped us to determine the real state of their use in natural linguistic discourse. Number 5. Thank you very much for the thank you very much for remark number 5. We will take into account in the near future in terms of contextual work. And now answers to the remarks of Vasilieva Galina Mikhailova. Number 1. In our study, scientific discourse, scientific text, linguistic discourse, and linguistic text are used as synonyms. Number 2. It seems that the ways of expressing conditional relations in all scientific texts are basically the same. However, there are some differences. For example, as Natalia Mikhailovna Lariokhina points out, in natural technical discourse, in the position of a predicate, verbs are mainly used with the meaning of qualitative and quantitative changes. Increase, decrease, rise, reduce, strengthen, weaken, etc. Verbs with the meaning of the stages of the process: to arise, to be obtained, to remain, to stop, and others. Such features of the use of predicates in linguistic discourse have not been found. Number 4. Training and control tasks, as a rule, are very similar in their content, since any training task has a control function, and any control task has a training function. This is why certification testing materials such as type tests were often used by teachers as teaching materials in the past. As for the diagnostics of tested students during the experiment, it is important to have not only the tasks themselves, but also an apparatus for measuring the results of the implementation. In our work, the assessment scales are given that we used when processing the results of the experiment. This is what distinguished test tasks from training tasks. We agree with the rest of Galina Mikhailovna's remarks and thank her for them. Then answers to the opinion of Dmitry Grigorievich Demidov. The first remark concerns the consideration of the native language when teaching the Russian language. I would like to note that in the linguistic and linguodidactic literature, there are two aspects of the study of the difficulties faced by students of a foreign language. The study of student mistakes, forecasting errors based on comparing the phenomenon of two languages. In our study, we focus on the second aspect and consider the difficulties that Chinese students may experience when studying Russian conditional constructions, using the data of comparisons between the Russian and Chinese languages. Such a comparison is useful not only for Chinese students studying Russian, but also for Russian sinologists. The second and third remarks are very important for us. We will take them into account in our future work. As for the transfer of sentences with the conjunction if, then with the comparative meaning to the topic comparative constructions, we also thought about this for a long time. Indeed, many linguists believe that in such constructions one can speak not about the relations of conditionality, but about the purely outer shelf of implication. For example, but in some textbooks, Svetlana Anatolievna Ilyina, Tatiana Vitalyevna Popova, 2007. This construction is included in the teaching material because it is important for students to know the polysemy of the conjunction if. Then, in these manuals, you can find the task determine in which case the conjunction if then has a conditional meaning and in which comparative. Analytical tasks and receptive tasks, the typology of the tasks. And these are concerns the review of Tarnaeva Larisa Petrovna, the chairman. Analytical tasks and perceptive tasks, this is a typology of exercise for their purpose. As indicated in the dictionary of methodological terms of Asimov and Shukin, analytical tasks are aimed at training and automating the use of linguistic material, at understanding and memorizing the structural components of speech presented in oral or written communication. Perceptive tasks are associated with the perception of finished language material during listening and reading. These are language tasks. In our study, analytical perceptive tasks are understood as tasks that stimulate the mental activity of students with the inductive introduction of educational material that is already partially familiar to them. When doing tasks such as find conditionals, what meanings do they express? It is necessary to know the structural features of conditional constructions, conjunctions, if, whether, etc. Students recognize the real or unreal meaning of a condition precisely through the analysis of formal indicators. The process is as follows: from form to meaning. Therefore, we attributed analytical tasks to the perceptive type. Many thanks to Larissa Petrovna for the second and third remarks related to the scientific novelty and theoretical significance of the work. We agree with them and we will take them into account. And again, I would like to repeat that we will do our best to take into account all your remarks in our further research. Dear colleagues, board members, are you satisfied with the answers of our candidate Fang Qian? Were you satisfied with all the answers? Nia Leonidovna? Fang Qian expressed her own opinion. We will take it into account. Her argumentation, it is her own point of view, her position. And you see, this construction, it is a pure conclusion, and I won't use it as a conditional construction. As for the stages, these are steps. There is lower step, next step, and we ascend this step, go up stairs. And you showed us linear, horizontal steps, something like that. And to speak that we deal with the form at the formal stage. It is the modern state of methodology is such that any form should be viewed from the point of view of its function. But you express your own position, and it is your right. Елена Валерьяновна, are you satisfied with the answers to your remarks and questions? The position is clear to me. Thank you. Galina Mikhailovna. Yes, I'm completely satisfied. Dmitry Grigorievich, what is your opinion? I'm completely satisfied. As for me, I share another point of view. I hold another point of view. Our positions are different. I support the idea that there is a difference between productive thinking and cognitive thinking, and it is the basis for the separation of the tasks to productive and reproductive. And using the provisions of cognitive psychology, they lead to the appearance of a new product, and the meanings which they express, it's not a production, it's reproduction. These tasks are very precious because of the fact they provoke thoughts. It is very nice that you included these tasks, but I don't agree with their differentiation from your point of view. But the tasks are brilliant. They develop critical thinking, and in the era of digital technologies, there is a lack of such tasks. There is a lack of such critical thinking. For example, compare, are there any cause and effect connections? It is sheer production. These are wonderful, brilliant tasks that they can be attributed to productive. productive type. We have the right to accept this or that topic. We will agree with you when you prove your point of view. You spoke that you have a manual. Has it been published? It is prepared for publishing, I understand. But unfortunately we thought that it has already been published and we wanted to study it in the future. Thank you for your answers, for your report. Are there any volunteers from the whole non-board members to express your opinion on the dissertation of Fang Qian? There are no volunteers to have the floor, and up to this moment, as a result of our live broadcasts, there are no questions received, and now the floor is given to the scientific supervisor, distinguished Leonid Viktorovich. Please have the floor and give your opinion about Fang Qian's research. Dear colleagues, I will be as brief as possible. I would like to outline the main peculiarities, the main traits of Fang Qian. She's our postgraduate student, and the accuracy of her research, the accuracy of everything she does, and it is a plus of our Russian education. Fang Qian was a bachelor student in the town of Orlov. Then she was a magister in a state university named after Pushkin, and then she became our postgraduate student. She is hardworking, disciplined. She perceived many positive things. it is very important moment. The second moment, her aspiration, she likes Russian grammar, and I recommended her to study linguistic aspects, but Fang Qian wanted to teach Chinese students Russian grammar. The third moment, important moment, it is the fact that she's hardworking. She impressed not only board members but me by her hard work. She's very hardworking. She worked constantly. She accumulated the material, and during the process of pre-defense, she was recommended to exchange the examples, and she announced that she had a lot of examples and she was going to find more examples. I would call such a quality as perfectionism, the aspiration to become better and better, to correct, and that's why Fang Qian decided not to defend her thesis right after the graduation from right after he finished postgraduate studies. It is an independent research, and she's a very prospective researcher. I'm not going to speak about the dignities of our candidates, the opponents have said everything. The general conclusion: Fang Qian, she is a prepared, highly qualified specialist. She is a researcher. She is able to solve scientific problems in the sphere of teaching Russian language as a foreign one. And I hope that our St. Petersburg State University will be proud of Fang Qian, and she will bring fruitful results. Leonid Viktorovich, thank you very much. Such kind words will become the stimulus for your further creative achievements, creative results in your scientific and methodological activity. As we conduct our meeting with the participants who are in the remote interactive mode, I ask a question. Dear board members and guests and applicants, do you have any questions, misunderstandings connected with the work concerning the remote interactive mode? As for this interactive mode, remote mode, did you understand everything? Or some? Do you have any misunderstanding? Maybe. Let me spend 1 minute for a technical question. I think that today's meeting clearly showed one serious problem, and the case when two people are right, for example, some aspects can be viewed as a sheer conclusion from the point of view of our Russian classifications of categories of condition, cause and effect, purpose, and something like that. But it seems to me Fang Qian speaks from the point of view of Chinese category of condition, and it is obvious that from the Chinese point of view about the condition, she is right. And here, I mean the expression judging by everything, and consequently the preparation of methodological material. Is it necessary to do it within the frames of the Russian categories? There are a lot of ways of considering Russian material, and we know how the Russian language is taught in Germany, the USA. Every country has its own long-term tradition of the description of Russian material. Someone does not agree with this tradition. It is in contradiction with our Russian grammar, and I think that this question can be discussed in the future. Thank you very much. I wish our candidate every success in her further work. Thank you. No voice in the microphone. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. And now we can announce a break before the vote or we don't need to have a break. What is your opinion? Do we need to have such a break? No, we are not going to announce the break. Let us continue and turn to the vote. Please switch off the sound of the broadcast during the discussion. We don't have a discussion, sorry. We don't have a break. The meeting continues. And I raise the question of awarding Fang Qian the degree of Candidate of Pedagogical Sciences in the Scientific Speciality 13002, Theory and Methodology of Teaching and Education, Russian as a Foreign Language, to an open roll call. I remind you that the decision of the Dissertation Council on the issue of awarding an academic degree is considered positive if more than half, but at least 3 members of the Dissertation Council who participated in the meeting voted for it, in accordance with Clause 23 of the procedure. Fedotova Nina Leonidovna, your opinion? I'm for. Board Member Buzalskaya Elena Valerianovna, I am for. Board Member Vasilieva Galina Mikhailovna, your opinion? I am for. Thank you very much. Board Member Dmitry Grigorievich, I am for. And me, Chairman of the Dissertation Council, Tarnaeva Larissa Petrovna, I am for. Thus, distinguished colleagues and guests, I announce that out of 5 board members participating in the voting, voted for 5 members, voted against no one, abstained no one. The decision on awarding Fang Qian an academic degree of Candidate of Pedagogical Sciences in the Scientific Speciality 13002, Theory and Methodology of Teaching and Education, Russian as a Foreign Language, is accepted. Dear colleagues, due to the fact that our meeting is held with the participants in the remote access mode, do the members of the Dissertation Council or the applicant and others have questions, comments on the procedure for holding the meeting, concerning the meeting of our Dissertation Council? Nina Leonidovna, Елена Валерьевна, Галина Михайловна, Dmitry Grigorievich. No objections. There are no remarks. And now our congratulations, dear Fang Qian, on awarding the academic degree to you. Your final word, Fang Qian. Let me express my deep gratitude to all those who took part in the preparation, presentation and discussion of my dissertation, especially in the context of pandemics. Let me express my gratitude to the chairman of the Dissertation Council, Larissa Petrovna Tarnaeva, and the members of the Council, Larissa Petrovna, members of the Dissertation Council, for the questions asked, valuable comments and advice that made it possible to identify the shortcomings of my work and indicate the directions for further research. I would especially like to express my sincere gratitude to my scientific supervisor, Leonid Viktorovich Moskovkin, for professional help at all stages of the dissertation, for patience and care. Without your help, I would not have been able to overcome this difficult research path. In conclusion, I would like to thank all the teachers of the Department of Russian, of Department of Teaching Russian as a foreign language at the methods of its teaching. All employees of the department for supporting the activities of the Dissertation Council, for the assistance provided and the work performed, as well as interpreter and video operator for their work. Separately, I would like, in particular, I would like to thank my parents and my husband for their continued support. Thank you. On behalf of the board members, please accept our congratulations on awarding the academic degree of the candidate of Pedagogical Sciences to you. We wish you every success in the future, creative achievements, and we hope that it seems to me that you will conduct further research. Your work is rich in considerable scientific potential from the point of view of linguistics, contribution to the development of the theory of discourse, from the development of the theory of the methods of teaching. I am sure that you will continue your research, and we will glad to see your future scientific works and scientific achievements. Are there any volunteers to have to say anything? Our meeting is declared closed. Thank you for the participation. Especially, I thank our board members who are in the remote interactive mode. I hope that you are with us. Thank you very much for the support. It's a pity that it happened so, but such are the things. The meeting is closed. Thank you.
Спасибо.